Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hello Nation, and welcome to the show where we show you how to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and welcome to another edition of Age of the Realms, Battle Report number 3. It is once again I, Commander CheapSkate of the Wild Hunt, my Sylvaneth army versus Blix the Blackhearted of the Great Moon Clans, and he is playing a Night Goblin army. So let's see what happens when Sylvaneth stack up against a full army of Night Goblins. And with that, we take us on to the army compositions.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Balor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. If you do not listen, then the hell with you.
And with that, let's go and start talking about deployment. As you can see here in the battlefield, basically went up with a kind of like a diagonal set of deployment area. My opponent rolled off on the won the roll off on how we were going to deploy. So he decided he wanted to split the table in half diagonally. So you can see on the near side, which is the closest part to the camera, there's my army basically set up, and across the board is that big, huge mob of Night Goblin greatness that is Blix the Blackhearted army. So let's break down to the individual deployment zones.
Mother Nature is a serial killer. No one's better, more creative.
Alright, in this photo you can see my deployment from my left-hand flank. As you can see in the far left-hand corner is Sternbark, my tree man, followed by my 20-man unit of Dryads, which is my Court of Summers unit. They're trying to take position right there next to that tower, and they're kind of holding out the left flank on that side. In the center here, as you can see, I got my 2 units of Treekin, my 4 Shamblers, as well as the Martyr and Poets. I also got Dryka there is also in the back in the forest there, trying to provide cover there. As you can see there, kind of in the center there, we also have the Court of Winter, which is my unit of 20 Dryads, as well as Coadil, my Treeman Ancient. So that makes up my center line. And last but certainly not least, on my right-hand flank, we got the beast himself, Dirthu. He's holding off the right flank there, right next to those standing stones. As you probably guessed, basically, I just kind of set my entire deployment zone between the standing stones as well as the left-hand flank. If you're wondering why I haven't deployed my forces, kept my Dryads as well as my treatment in reserve in order to deploy them along the spirit paths, is because the majority of the force are my enemy's deployment zone. He basically put all of his forces within 9 inches. Actually, no, sorry, within 9 inches, within 8 inches of each of the forests, so I couldn't really deploy my troops at all. So I basically had to deploy my entire army all at once, because he's a Night Goblin player, and they're sneaky little kids. So yeah, that is deployment on my army.
And is your heart black and full of hate?
Black as midnight, black as pitch, blacker than the foulest way.
Alright, so this is Blix the Blackhearted's left flank. As you can see there, we have Undead Fred the Giant, as well as a unit of 20 Night Goblins right there looking on top of that hill. And as you can see, kind of hidden in the forest there is a Ragnarok Spider. So that makes up my opponent's left-hand flank. And like I said before, all of his units are within 8 inches of the Sylvaneth forest, so I can't really deep shot my troops anymore. So sneaky, sneaky guy. There in the center portions, as you can see there is a continuation with the rest of the photo. You can see the Ragnarok Spider there, hidden out in that forest there. And right there you got a massive unit of 20 Night Goblin Spearmen. Right behind them you have a Night Goblin Shaman as well as a Night Goblin War Boss right behind them. And on kind of category to the right of them is another unit of 20 Night Goblin Archers. And finally, running out my opponent's right-hand flank, you have a unit of Squigs, Cave Squigs, as well as Squig Herders. So you have 6 Squig Herders in the back there, as well as 18 Cave Squigs. And to make matters worse, my opponent has 9 Fanatics in this army, and he hasn't told me what units he's hit him in yet, so I also have to deal with that as well. So that pretty much makes up my enemy's deployment zone. And as per usual for the rules, because my opponent has third more models than me, I get to choose a sudden death victory. So I decided to elect to take the piece of terrain in my enemy's territory, and of course my opponent decides to pick on that massive hill there as his the objective I have to seize, which is going to be kind of fun to try to take out. If I can get a unit within 3 inches of that hill by turn 4, I automatically win the game. So yeah, let's see if we can accomplish that sudden death victory.
And is your heart black and full of hate?
Black as midnight, black as pitch, blacker than the foulest way.
So we're off to turn number 1 on the Night Goblins. Basically, they won the roll on the initiative on that part, and not very much happens in terms of movement. He pretty much keeps all his forces together on the left-hand side. What he does do, though, he moves Undead Fred, his giant, up forward. The maximum movement allows to kind of get some right smack dab near that forest. That way, I can't deploy my troops in there for certain, and kind of wedges himself between the forest as well as the tower there to kind of receive any charges that might be coming his way. So that's moving on this side. And in the center, as well as the right-hand flanks of his army, basically just kind of swings them along in order to start enveloping my forces, what he does. You can see that unit of spearmen basically stays put, but that unit of archers also moves forward, as well as that unit of squig hoppers and squig herders also move as well. I forgot to mention this during the command phase. Basically, he gives his, what you call it, the Inspiring Presence command ability for his spearmen, so that way they don't worry about breaking it all. And his shaman casts the mystical shield on his unit of spearmen as well, so that way they get a +1 armor save as well. So that pretty much makes up his entire turn because there's no shooting, there's no combat, no charges. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Mother Nature is a serial killer. No one's better, more creative.
And with that, we go into the command as well as movement abilities. For my command abilities, I'm going to show that in the next photo here. But for the movement phase, you can see here, basically I just move everything up. I have my my Treeman Sternbark as well as my unit of Court of Summer move up as quickly as they can and try to get within charge distance of Undead Fred there, who's located right there. I also got my Martyrs and Poets as well as my Forest Shamblers moving up. But on the other side of that tower in order to engage the Spearmen and also to engage the Arachnid Rock Spider, and then of course Drycut the Brat Rage moves up forward to kind of go in her magical support. So that's movement and command on this side of the board. And on this side of the board, for my movement phase, you can see that I move up my unit of the Court of Winter. I move them up as fast as possible, same with Coedo, my Treeman Ancient, and same with Durthus on the other side of those Standing Stones. I also use Durthus' command ability, which is his String Sing ability, to sum up a Sylvaneth Wildwood that's right behind the Arachnid Rock Spider there right next to the hill. My goal is to have Durthu try to run to the Sylvaneth forest as closest to the right-hand side. It's kind of off-frame, but it's on the right-hand side. And then from there, teleport to that forest in the back, so that way he can charge up that hill and basically occupy it. And that way I can start sending my treatment into that area as well as what I'm trying to do so in order to get that sudden death victory. So that is movement and command on this side of the board. And with that out of the way, we go right into the shooting phase.
This is my boomstick!
Sternbark takes his Strangle Roots, aimed directly at Undead Fred, and let loose, and he actually inflicts 3 wounds on the giant, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. So right off the bat, first blood goes to me. So far so good with the shooting phase on this part. And in this photo, Coedo the Treeman opens up this Doomed Tendril Staff at that unit of red-capped goblins, which is the armor of the short bows, and I managed to plink off 4 more of those night goblins as well. So shooting phase is off to a pretty good start. Which takes us directly into the charge phase. Which was pretty lackluster because most of my units failed their charges. The Dryads failed their charge. Same thing on the other side of the board where my Dryad tried to charge into that unit of Night Globs. That didn't work as well. The only guy who basically charged into his opponent was Sternbark, so he basically landed that blow. So that is the charge phase with this. And onto that, we move on directly to the combat phase.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
And the combat phase was freaking amazing. Not only did I land with my sweeping blows attacks, but basically brought down a ton of wounds when it came to Undead Fred. Basically brought within, I think, 3 wounds. What I did is I used Sternbark's Impaling Talons attack. He inflicted another wound on top of that. And with the Impaling Talons attack, what happens is that you then take a d6 and you roll it, and you subtract 1 from the roll. And if your roll beats the number of wounds that the opponent has left, you basically instantly slay that model. And since I beat the roll where Undead Fred's number of wounds were, basically Sternbark took this Impaling Claw, stuck it right into his chest, and removed Undead Fred's heart, which is pretty freaking amazing. So that was pretty awesome. That guy didn't even have a chance to counterattack. That's how pretty sweet it was. So yeah, that pretty much sums up the combat phase on this side and end my turn.
And is your heart black and full of hate?
Black as midnight, black as pitch, blacker than the foulest way.
And Blix the Blackhearted basically won the initiative role in this one, so he gets to go first again in turn number 2. As you can see in this photo, basically he just marches up his unit of Night Goblins there with the yellow hoods. He basically moves them up 4 in order to get pot shots off at Sternbark there. And that pretty much makes it the command as well as the movement phase on this side of the board for him. As you can see in this picture, basically he keeps his spearmen directly in the location that they're at. It doesn't really move them at all. He also gives his spearmen his Inspiring Presence roll as well. The Night Elf Shaman tries to cast Curse of the Bad Moon, but unfortunately for him, he's unable to... Well, actually, he does actually get the spell off, but luckily for me, my Tree Man Ancient Coadil managed to unbind that spell, so that spell doesn't go off, because that could have been bad real quick. So that's command and movement for that unit. And also, as you see on the right-hand side there, his red-capped Night Goblins basically just move their full movement allowance forward as well to set themselves up for a charge. As you can see, movement phase in the very far right-hand flank of his army is also pretty standard as well. Basically, he moves up the maximum allowance with his Cave Squigs, I believe what they're called? Yeah, Cave Squigs, yeah. He basically moves up the maximum amount with those guys, and same with the Herders. And so that pretty much sums up the movement phase for my opponent.
This is my boomstick!
Shooting phase for my opponent was pretty much uneventful. He managed to plink off a wound off of Sternbark, the Tree Man, as you can see here in the picture, in the center of this picture here. So that's shooting on this side of the board. And on the right-hand side of the board, those red-capped goblins managed to plink off a wound off of Darthu as well during the shooting phase. So that pretty much sums up my opponent's shooting phase, and that takes us directly to the charge phase. And this is where the pain comes in. As you can see here, my opponent decided to launch his Fanatics for during his charge phase. So you can see in this picture, 3 of his Fanatics charging to Sternbark, my Treemen. So that all kinds of problems are about to break out over here. And as you can see in this photo, the Fanatics in the center for the 2 units, the 40 Goblins launched their 3 Fanatics. Same thing with the Archers in that unit as well to the right. They launched the 3 Fanatics, kind of filling up the center there. As you can see in the bottom of the picture there, my opponent sends his Cave Squigs charging directly at Darthu, so not to worry about those guys. Those guys should be pretty easy. So yeah, that rounds up the charging phase for my opponent. It's on to the combat phase.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
As you can see in this picture, when it comes to the combat phase, Sternbark managed to kill off those 3 Night Goblin Fanatics, but not before they established knocking off, I think it was, 6 wounds? Yeah, basically landing 6 wounds on Sternbark as well. So pretty much he is over the halfway mark when it comes to his wound, and that was really painful, and that sucked. I can't even tell you. Fanatics are just as deadly in this game as they were in the 8th edition of Warhammer, so go looking for those guys. So yeah, that pretty much sums up combat on this side of the board. And on this side of the board, the combat between Darthu and the Cave Squigs, I seriously underestimated the power of those dang things.
I gotta sing the Doom song now! Doom, 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 doom,
I managed to kill a good number of those guys, but I did not realize that the Cave Squigs had 2 wounds apiece, and these things are brutal. I mean, it's +5 to hit, +3 to wound, but these things inflict D3 wounds every single time they do inflict a hit. And man, these things are brutal. As you can see, they put 6 wounds on Darthu, which is not bad considering the amount of punishment these guys could bring out. I managed to kill a handful of them using my short strike. I thought when I hit him twice, I was able to wipe out the entire unit. Nope, I only managed to wipe out 6 of them because they had 2 wounds apiece. Very resilient unit, very damage outputting is really high. Luckily for me, they were within 5 inches of their Herders, otherwise they would have gotten some bonuses as well, and that would have been really bad for my guy. And I'm starting to realize now that maybe I made a tactical error allowing Darth to be charged by these things, because man, Cave Squigs are beasts in this game. They're pretty dangerous. So yeah, that pretty much sums up the combat phase for this.
Mother Nature is a serial killer. No one's better, more creative.
Alright, this is the picture of the left-hand side of the board after the command as well as movement phase. So let's start with the command phase. And if you notice that Durthu's at the top of the picture there, right next to the hill. What happened was during his command phase, I basically used his string sing ability, brought up another Sylvaneth Wildwood right next to him, and basically during the movement phase, I used that to actually transport him over there to the other side of the board, where basically grew that forest and teleported to just take the hill. So if I can get to him on top of that hill before turn 4, I should be able to secure victory for this battle, which is kind of good because I'm taking some pretty serious losses on my big monster guys. As you can see on the left-hand side of the page, the picture, basically Sternbark as well as the Court of Summer basically storms up to the swing up to the left to hit for that yellow-capped unit of Night Goblins. As you can see in the center portions there, my Treekin as well as my Court of Winters also move up as well, setting themselves up to charge into that unit of 40 Goblin Spearmen. So yeah, that's pretty much movement and command on this side of the board. As for command and movement on this side of the board, as you can see on the right-hand side there, the right-hand corner, that's the Sylvaneth wood that Durthu called up so that he can teleport himself out of there. But anyways, moving on to the command phase, Coedo basically came into his own during this phase. First of all, he used his tree whacking ability, his spell that allows him to awaken up the woods for Sylvaneth Wildwoods, and basically he targeted that forest that the Arachnarok spider was located at, managed to inflict 3 mortal wounds on that bad boy, so managed to take off 3 wounds of him, and he also managed to put 3 wounds on that unit of Night Goblins as well, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. And aside from casting those spells, Coedo also is hightailing it out of there, heading towards the Sylvaneth Wildwood Star to the left that is off of this frame of this picture, so that he too can also teleport across the map, so that way he can lend support to Durthu in taking that hill. So that way by turn 4 I can win some victory on this part. So yeah, Coedo is definitely making his own on this round. So that pretty much sums up the command as well as the movement phase for my turn.
This is my boomstick!
We're now going to the shooting phase. As you can see in this photo, Coedo basically turns around does a quick snap fire with his Doom Tendril staff on that unit of Fanatics are in the center of the board. Basically managed to plink off 2 of those bad boys as well, so that was pretty awesome. So, man, Coedo's doing really good this round. He's casting spells, he's shooting off stuff and blowing things up. I mean, can't really complain about the Tree Man H. He's doing a pretty good job. Only thing they can do better for him is increase his combat stats, but that's about it though. So yeah, way to go.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable! You keep using the horde. I don't think it means what you think it means.
As for the shooting on this side of the bar, pretty lackluster. My Tree Man Sternbark only managed to kill off 1 goblin with shooting, so that was pretty sad. I mean, I just filled my worlds. There's no excuse for it. Basically, I just did badly on that. So yeah, that pretty much sums up the shooting phase. With that, we go directly into the charge phase. As you can see in this photo, charging was pretty successful on the left-hand side of the board. Sternbark as well as my Court of Summers just swarmed that unit of yellow-capped Night Goblins, so that was pretty good there. I basically tried to, as you can see on the right-hand side, I tried to charge with my Treekin, my Force Channel, which is the unit there in the front. Tried to charge with the Anorak Spider, but that didn't work out too well either, so that charge fell, so they basically kind of stand there. So yeah, that's charge on the left-hand side of the board here. And as you see in this picture, my Court of Winter successfully charges into the Night Goblin mob that's right there in the center. So that should be pretty kind of cool. And after I made that charge, I kind of realized I might have made a tactical error on this charge because all my opponent basically has to do is send in his Night Goblin archers on the right-hand side as well as his Fanatics, and they can just swarm right into the back of my troops. I made a classical 8th edition mistake. I'm only used to be able to have units going forward in most cases. I'm not used to having units going backwards in terms of their tactical deployments. So, yeah, at this point I realized I might have made a mistake and that unit might be toast.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
Close combat phase is on next. As you can see on this left-hand side of the board, that close combat was brutal for my opponent. Basically, we vaporized that unit of Night Goblins. I managed to take off a large amount of them using just Sternbark alone. He did most of the damage himself. When the Night Goblins counterattacked, they only basically managed to wound 1 of my Dryads in the process. My Dryads managed to finish off that unit, so combat is pretty much done and done for that part. And close combat for my Dryads against this big unit mob of Night Goblin Spearmen also went really well. Basically, I managed to cut that unit in half with my attacks. They managed to kill off a couple of my Dryads in the process, but not too bad. So all in all, we're doing pretty good on this battle. Night Goblins are not as much of a problem as I thought they were going to be. They have some real difficulties when it comes to hitting their opponents, but when it comes to their wound rolls, though, they're pretty good. Basically, the more Night Goblins they have, the more effective they become at wounding their targets. So they have that going for them. So yeah, that pretty much sums up the combat phase, and that takes us to the next turn.
And is your heart black and full of hate?
Black as midnight, black as pitch, blacker than the foulest way.
So this is a picture of top of turn 3 after movement and command phase. As you can see, pretty much my opponent gives his his night goblins, his spearmen the inspired presence rules, not to worry about doing break checks. And basically my fears are starting to come to light now with what I talked about earlier with my dryads. My opponent moves up his fanatics up to near the back of my dryads and basically prepares to give my opponents, my dryads, a run for their money. He also swings up like a door with his cave squigs, as well as his unit of 20 archers, the red-capped archers, as well as the squig herders, to basically kind of swarm into the flank of my dryads as well, which is kind of tragic. Also, if you notice on the top of the page there, his his Arachnarok spider basically climbs out of the forest, gets into near the Sylvaneth forest there, and basically is setting himself up for a beautiful charge in a Dirthy, which is kind of a bad thing as well. And the reason why that's so bad is because during the command phase, his shaman opened up with Arcane Bolt on Dirthu and basically clinked him all the way up to only 1 more wound remaining. He's got 11 wounds on him, and Dirthu only has 12. And if that spider rushes into him and manages to fleek a single wound, Dirthu is dead, and my plans of taking that hill by turn 4 are over. So, yeah, not looking good for the home team. Shooting was pretty much a wash for my opponent. Didn't manage to get many of my shots off, so because of that, we go directly to the charging phase, and there has been some. As you can see in this photo, instead of sending his fanatics into my to my dryads in the center of the board, he decides to charge right into my first unit of Treekin and basically lands him. He long bombs those charges like it's nobody's business. I mean, those charges should have been impossible. He made it. For the little guy who was up there in the front, the purple-capped fanatic, he rolled 11 for his charge, so he basically made it into my Treekin. And for those guys with the red caps, he basically needed a perfect 12 to do it. He's like, it's Warhammer, might as well try gambling. So Blix, the black card, rolls 2 dice, and he gets boxcars and basically makes it right into the charge. I could not believe it that the charge actually worked out. He also sent his cave squigs, you can see there on the right-hand side of the photo, into the back of my dryads as well. So yeah, charge phase was just marvelous for my opponent. Shooting wasn't so great, but his charge was right on point. As you can see in this photo as well, the cave squigs charge into the rear of my dryads in the center of the board, as well as that unit of red-capped goblins. They charge into the flank of my dryads as well. So now my dryads are totally enveloped, and that just looks like it's going to be a hopeless slaughter for my dryads. My only hope is that my tree can quickly catch into this combat and basically let up some support, because those dryads are basically done for. As you can see in this photo up top, basically the Arachnarok spider successfully charges into Dirthu, and now I'm kind of cringy because if they manage to inflict 1 wound on Dirthu, he is a dead man. So that sums up the charging phase, and that takes us directly into the combat phase.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
And as you see in this photo, close combat was very much a victory for my opponent. He managed to slip the last wound on Dirthu, which was really sad. Basically what happened is that in the attacks, the spear attacks, basically all of them flubbed, so that was wonderful. With his leg attack that the spider has, half of them flubbed, the other half I managed to save, so that was also amazing as well. What killed me in the end was that Venom Surge attack that the Arachnarok spider can do. Basically, if he rolls a 6 on any one of his wounds, he causes D3 mortal wounds as part of his Venom Surge for his attack, and he basically got that one, and he rolled a 2 on that Venom Surge attack and basically killed Dirthu, and I am really, really sad about that.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping.
Yeah, I hate it when Dirthu dies. But on the flip side, we go to the combat phase on this side, and my Martyrs and Poets just destroy those 2 units of Fanatics. I got to attack first, and that was not a problem whatsoever. My tree can just wipe those Fanatics off the face of the planet, so that was kind of nice. I was kind of hoping that he would spend his first attack attacking Dirthu, that way when my turn came up, I could focus on the Fanatics. Still kind of rosy raw that Dirthu is dead. I won't be able to get that hill by turn 4, but I'll take it. So yeah. That's combat right here. And combat on this side of the board was pretty interesting.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable! You keep using the horde. I don't think it means what you think it means.
It was just all kinds of bad for both sides of the combat when it came to this one. Basically, when it was all said and done, after all the attacks from the Cave Squig and the Night Goblins and my Dryads and everything else like that, I only managed to kill 6 Night Goblins, and the Night Goblins in turn only managed to kill 4 of my Dryads. It was just bad. You wouldn't believe the number of 1s, 2s, and 3s we were both rolling at this time period. It was pretty bad. We're kind of like, oh man, is this a sign from the gods or something? Is this battle not supposed to happen? It was pretty bad. We both got super frustrated during this combat at all, especially my opponent. I feel so bad for my opponent, Blix the Blackheart, because he's got 3 different units, and he flubbed spectacularly for all 3 of his units. It was pretty bad because I only managed to kill 4 of my Dryads. So, yeah, that pretty much rounds up the combat this side, as well as mounts up the frustration for the entire battle. So, yeah, that pretty much what happens.
Mother Nature is a serial killer. No one's better, more creative.
Alright, with that, we'll go on to Sylvaneth for the turn number 3. There is no real command phase for me anymore because, Dirthu's dead, so I can't bring up any more tree songs. But Coedil, he's unable to cast any spells either because nothing's pretty much within range. So we go straight to movement. As you can see in this picture, Sternbark basically moves up to where that hill is, same thing with the Court of Summer. And both units of Tree can also move in as well to get involved in that massive melee that's taking place in the center there. Draka pulls up for support, and Coedil, instead of running to the forest, in order to teleport to the hill, I decided to turn around and run him as quickly as I can towards the melee as well. And the reason why is because I might not be able to win this battle by taking a sudden death victory, but I'm pretty certain I could probably win it just by destroying my opponent the old-fashioned way. So that's why I'm basically setting everything in. At this point, we're going to go for broke, and we're just trying to kill as many goblins as possible before the end of turn 6.
This is my boomstick!
With moving all over, we go directly to the shooting phase. You can see in this photo, Coedil basic lines of his Doom Tendril staff, snaps off a shot at the Night Goblin Shaman and blows him right off the table, which is pretty cool. I landed the hit on him. I rolled for my damage. I rolled a 6. The Night Goblin Shaman has a really bad save. Was unable to save any of them, so I blinked him right off of the board, which is pretty cool, man. I can kind of just imagine how this would look like in the battlefield. You got Coedil, he's kind of raw, just running across the board like bammo, just opens fire and just vaporizes the Night Goblin Shaman right in front of everybody, which I thought was pretty kind of cool. So, yeah, that was pretty much shooting on this side of the board. We then get into the charge phase. As you can see in this photo, there has been some massive amounts of charges. Basically, Coedil smashes right into that unit of Night Goblins. We have both units of Treekin also smash into that unit of Night Goblins, getting on the flank as well as into the Cave Squigs. My Court of Summer and Sternbark do not charge because they're unable to successfully charge into the Arachnarok spiral that's at the top of the map there. And of course, Drika can't get into anything anyway, so she's kind of hanging back. So yeah, pretty much we just swarm everything going in. It worked pretty well last time for me when I fought against the High Elves in my last battle report with these guys, so I figured, just keep working with it. Just swarm and see what happens. And that's exactly what I did.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
Then we get to the close combat phase. As you can see here, that combat phase was brutal. At the end of the day, only 3 Night Goblin Spearmen survive out of that entire ordeal. Basically, only 3 of my Dryads in the Court of Winters also survive as well. About half of my unit of the Martyrs and Poets, the big Treekin models, those guys end up getting killed because what happens is that if a Squig, when they fought the Squig, they fought the Cave Squigs. And whenever a Cave Squig unit basically fails a Battle Shock test, you roll a d6 die, you roll a 6-sided die, and for every roll of 4 up, basically they inflict a mortal wound. Well, basically 6 of those guys fled off the table, and they inflicted, you probably guessed it, they inflict all 6 of those guys inflicted a mortal wound as they left. Luckily for me, those units were affected were my Dryads as well as my Treekin only. Koa that was looking dodged that bullet, but man. Cave Squigs are just too good. I mean, if you're a Night Goblin player and you don't have Cave Squigs in your army, you're doing something really wrong. Basically, my suggestion to you is get as many Cave Squigs as you can for your army and just send them into the fray. Just have nothing but Cave Squigs. Oh, actually, that would just be kind of scary. Can you imagine an entire army full of Squig Herders and Squig Hoppers and Mangler Squigs and, I can't even imagine what that battle would look like. But anyway, so yeah. that's what happened in the combat phase on this side. And so, yeah, just totally brutal, totally annihilated my enemy on that part, and it was pretty bad. With close combat coming to an end, my opponent's turn pops up. We roll for initiative. He gets to go next. And he looks around the table and Blix the Black card realizes that the only thing he has left is a handful of Night Goblins and basically a partially wounded Ragnarok Spider, and he basically just calls the game. He says, you know what, I surrender. It looks like you're going to kick my butt, so he just basically gives up. And I can understand where he's coming from. I mean, I still got a whole unit of Dryads still left. Most of my Treekin are still alive. I still got 2 Treemen as well as my Branch Wraith, and he just has a handful of guys left over him. So, yeah, that pretty much sums up the game. So, yeah, moving on to the after action report because this game is now over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the After Action Report. This is the part of the battle report where we basically look at what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we have another battle report. So this was Age of the Realms battle report number 3. It was I, Commander CheapSkate of the Wild Hunt with my Sylvaneth army versus Blix the Black Card of the Great Moon Clan of the Night Goblins. And this battle ended up being a victory for yours truly. So a couple of things to think about. First of all, I need to rethink my placement of the Wildwoods. The reason why is because my opponent, the way he set up his deployment zone and the way he set up his units, he basically took away my Sylvaneth 4 Wildwoods away from me, so that way I couldn't teleport my forces across the battlefield like I usually do. So basically I need to rethink about how I use those things from now on because I'm starting to realize my opponents are starting to pick up on how I use them. And now it's starting to bite me really bad. So yeah, I have to think about changing up a little bit. And I think the main way by doing that is by deploying Durthu. From now on, I think about deploying with the rest of my army now with my Dreekin as well as my Branch Ray. So that way, if that kind of thing happens where my opponents basically occupy my Wildwoods, I can then sing up more Wildwoods upon the tabletop. And I also could also solve that problem by having my Treeman Ancient also nearby as well. So that way he can start casting his... Awakening the Wood spell that would basically cause damage to anybody who gets near enough to those forests. So that's another thing I think about as well. Another thing is my forces are too spread out. I'm realizing that when I spread my forces out and rely mainly on my Treemen to do stuff, I basically take a lot of casualties. I'm not concentrating my forces enough. Every single time I swarm my opponent with multiple different units, basically always ends up being an alternate win for me. So I think I need to start doing that from now on. Start concentrating my forces, stop spreading them out, stop trying to cover all the bases and just basically... just focus on one spot and go for it. Treekin, I need to be able to speed those guys up somehow. Every single battle I've used those guys, they've basically been lagging behind all the time. They're not very fast, so maybe I might need to rethink them in my army. Maybe I need to replace them with a Force Dragon, maybe. I don't know. I got to basically think about it for my Treekin, find a way to speed those guys up because they're pretty slow and they're kind of coming into battle a little too late to much effect of anything. As for my opponent, those Cave Squigs, oh my god, Cave Squigs are dangerous. They are the illest things on the battlefield. D3 wounds, they cause a mortal wound when they break due to bravery checks. I mean, those things are the beast. And I'm not sure if you're a Goblin player and you don't have Cave Squigs in your army, you need to rethink that tactic because Cave Squigs are pretty brutal so far. Goblins are not to be underestimated by far in this game. Ever since Age of Sigmar came out, a lot of Orcs and Goblin players have to worry about certain things like animosity is no longer an issue. And basically that makes them a little bit more competitive as well, especially Goblins. I would never thought that Night Goblins would be as deadly as they are. I was actually surprised at how deadly that army really was with all the different things that basically they had going for it. With its kind of like its cunning gameplay and its cunning tricks and stuff. And yeah, pretty brutal. I can't even imagine what happens if Blix was to bring out Skarsnik and Goblin and have that unit his army as well, because then he could just retreat with his units and cause mortal wounds all day. So that would be kind of cool to see that as well. So yeah, pretty much it was a good game, a great opponent, fun as always. I'm still having a lot of fun playing Age of Sigmar, having a lot of fun learning how to use my Sylvaneth army. I really like going because of forces that I'm facing against. So yeah, nothing but good things to say about this. So yeah, that pretty much sums up Battle Report number 3, Age of the Realms. Thanks for watching, Nation, and tune in next time to where we see who we take on next. So, bye!